The Rangers got some bad news this weekend about pitching injuries, and then they got some worse news about their pitching injuries. Talk about all that and more this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Jon Gray suffering a broken wrist, Cody Bradford's injury being worse than we originally thought, and what the heck the Rangers are going to do about it. Before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, the Rangers had a bad weekend. No, they had a really bad weekend in terms of the news they were getting about their starting pitching injuries. Now, last week, I knocked on wood. I knocked on literal wood several times saying, hey, things have been going pretty well for the Rangers and their pitching injuries so far this spring training. And, well, wasn't enough. Maybe I should have found an actual oak tree or a redwood or something. I don't know what I could have found and done differently to make this not happen. But Jon Gray on Friday night got struck in the wrist by a line drive, broken wrist on his right wrist, his pitching wrist. He is going to be not throwing a baseball for at least 6 weeks. It seems like the very earliest he could come back and be an option for this rotation is 10 weeks. And then the Rangers also got some more news about Cody Bradford, who it seemed like, hey, 5 days rest is what he's going to get. We knew he was going to start the season on the IL, but now it's going to be 3 weeks shut down from throwing. Maybe May is when he's ready, early May, to join this rotation. That would just be, not even the rotation, just join the roster. That would be more of a maybe multi-inning relief kind of a role, and then build him back up to being a starter. I don't know. It's the news is not good. It's bad. It's real bad. And the Rangers are going to be relying on the Vandy Boys a whole lot more than they initially planned or anticipated early on this season. And thankfully, they both have a lot of upside. Thankfully, they're both pretty hardworking kids who have had some moments this spring. Jack has looked much better this spring on the whole. Rocker in games has been a little bit rough. He's had some moments on the backfields where he's looked a lot better. In the major leagues last year, Rocker looked a whole lot better than Leiter did, but Jack's got 2 new pitches. He's got a new outlook on life. He's got a new mentality. Everything looks new for Jack, but neither of them feels like are quite ready. But they might just have to be. I mean, right now, this Rangers rotation as it stands for sure, Nathan Eovaldi, opening day starter. Finally, they announced that. I don't know why it took them about a week and a half longer than it needed to. They've also got Jacob deGrom starting Game 5, who is going to be starting every 6th day as opposed to every 5th day. So that's another bit of a bugaboo in this rotation. Also, they're going to be very much taking the kid gloves with deGrom, trying to not throw him too hard, not throw him too many innings, just keep him healthy, especially for the stretch run. Again, assuming this team even has a stretch run at this point. And then the only other starter that's for sure going to be in this rotation is Tyler Mahle, who hasn't looked great this spring. The velocity's been down. He's at least healthy at this point. He did have a little bit of soreness in his forearm. The Rangers pushed his start back a day. They ended up starting on the backfields, and the Rangers said everything's all fine and good there. But they also said that about Rocker, and then his last outing was also not great. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows at this point? The Rangers have 3 legit starters. 2 of them are going to probably have kid gloves on them for how many pitches they throw, how often they throw this year. And even if Rocker's part of this rotation, he's also going to be kind of treated a little bit with kid gloves of how much is he going to throw. I doubt it's more than 125 innings. I mean, Rocker has not pitched all that much the last couple of years. Even the year before, really the last 3 years, 2 years, 2024. didn't pitch all that much, pitched about 50 innings. 2023 pitched maybe 20 or so innings before going under the knife for Tommy John surgery. The year before that, he had 4 of those starts before in the Frontier League before he got drafted, and then he had a couple of outings in the Arizona Fall League. So really, it's been since basically, 2021 or so since Rocker has had a full workload of a season. And even that, it's not anywhere near what a 30-start big league season would be like. And Rocker's still got a little bit of refinement to go in his latest outing. I think that the numbers are worse. I watched him. He looked better than that. Still had a little bit of struggles with the strike zone. He got lit up just a little bit. Only 2 1/3 innings pitched. Only struck out 2. And he threw 61 pitches in those 2 1/3 innings, along with a couple of walks, along with a home run. I mean, it wasn't as bad of a start as it looks like, and a lot of those hits and a lot of those runs and even those walks, they were should have been a couple more strikes that he got, and a lot of it was just soft contact. The home run, not soft contact, but still not as bad of a start, not as far away of a start as it seems. But the Rangers don't have the luxury of him nibbling, of him, not quite going at it. I still have some frustrations with him and his pitch selection. He's still throwing too many four-seamers. The four-seamer is not good. Throw the sinker. Kumar, please. And I still don't think we've seen the cutter at all this spring. We didn't see it at all in games last year, either at the minor league level or at the big league level. He needs just that one more pitch. The changeup has not looked particularly inspiring this spring. He's at least thrown it more than, 2% or so of the time that he did in the majors last year. The slider curveball thing looks good, very good. The four-seamer is what it is. At this point, if it was sitting up there in the upper 90s, I'd feel a lot better about it. But now it's sitting around 96, which is fine, good. But the Rangers just need a little bit more from him and from Leiter. And you look at the internal options. I mean, I just did a show last week, I think on Thursday, talking about, if Cody Bradford ends up missing a lot more time and Malley misses a whole lot more time, the Rangers have basically 3 starters. And then you look at the depth behind Rocker and Leiter, if those guys are even ready. And it's not all that inspiring. I mean, the Rangers have been really impressed with what Caleb Bushley has done this spring training, what Adrian Hauser has done this spring training, what Patrick Murphy, another non-roster invitee, has done this spring training. Murphy hasn't allowed a single earned run this spring training at all. He's coming back over from Japan after a couple of years there, pitching more of a relief role, so maybe starter is not exactly what they're going to do. They also have Jesse Chavez, who's pitched in multiple innings. In times he's looking better, more refined for him. His spring numbers always look terrible, so don't freak out too much about that. That's just kind of the way Jesse Chavez is. He's more of a field pitcher, so it takes him some time to get ready. So the results in spring are not going to be good. But if they start coming around towards the back end, then he's starting to get more of that feel for his pitches, starting to see, okay, this guy is just getting himself ready. He's one of those guys, especially who you got to throw out what the results are actually saying and look at his body of work and look more towards the end of spring training of what that looks like. But behind those guys, I mean, even those guys, not a whole lot of them inspiring a whole lot of confidence. And apparently at this point, according to Evan Grant, Dallas Morning News, Dane Dunning is not being considered for a rotation spot, which after this, I don't know how you can not consider him. He hasn't looked horrible this spring. I know last year was rough, but especially given where the Vandy Boys are right now, of not quite ready, almost, but not quite. Maybe they'll have to do a lot of learning at the big league level in a competitive window, which is just not a recipe for success for the Rangers or for either of Rocker or Leiter. I think Dunning can give you some quality innings, but Chris Young has said, hey, we're gonna have to be creative about how we go about this, how we solve this problem. There's not just one guy who's going to come up and, step up into this role. And hopefully, Jon Gray is only going to miss those 10 weeks. I say only because we've seen very recently how much a wrist fracture can completely derail a season. We saw it with Josh Young last year, and we're seeing it now, unfortunately, with Jon Gray. Just a line drive in a stupid spring training game that just completely wrecks things. But that's the way baseball go. And unfortunately, Cody Bradford is not going to be sidelined for just that short amount of time. The Rangers really did not need any of this. Not that you ever need an injury in the rotation, but especially with what they've got right now. I mean, the Rangers are relying a lot they're going to rely a lot on Nathan Eovaldi early. And heck, the Rangers might not be able. I'm worried that they're going to take some of those limiters off of DeGrom early on in the season and have to, pitch him every fifth game and not be able to be as, limited with him, with his pitch counts and what he's being asked to do. And I worry about what that could do for him being healthy towards that stretch run. Maybe the Rangers are just going to have to out-hit their problems. At this point, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about why I'm not confident that Jack or Kumar are just quite ready, why I'm just so worried about this injury, why it's basically the last thing that the Rangers need, and what the Rangers might do to fix this problem. All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats. Help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. The satisfying crack of opening each shell, it's just like a snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snackin' and get crackin' with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. This show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and taking control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Shout out to the Everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and doing an opening day roster projection. It has changed quite a bit since I did my last one a couple weeks ago. Wasn't sure I'd do a third, but especially with these injuries, there are quite a few things to project, and who knows how right I will be with any of these. But with the Rangers' internal options, obviously option A and B, there was a question before the Jon Gray injury of, okay, the Raiders have one spot in their rotation for opening day with the lefty Cody Bradford going on the IL. Who's going to get it? Is it going to be Rocker or is it going to be Leiter? And now the option is not either or, it's both. And the Rangers really need both of them at this point. I'm not sure exactly how ready they are. The other option that the Rangers are going to have, if they want to go non-traditional, which Chris Young said they might, of just cobbling together innings as much as they can. Maybe Rocker or Leiter, they're not quite ready for that full-time every fifth day, go out there and face the order 3-4 times through, throw 100 pitches, get through 5-6 innings, and then get you to the next day. Maybe they're ready for more of a kind of piggyback tandem kind of a start thing. If that's the case, then maybe Emiliano Teodo, they don't fully stretch him back out to being a starter, but just use him as a multi-inning reliever. The Rangers' Bruce Bochy said on Foul Territory last week that Teodo is going to be in the bullpen. Earlier in the week, the Rangers were debating on whether or not to put him just as a reliever this year or stretch him back out to be a starter. I think long-term that might end up being better for Teodo, but at this point, the Rangers might need to go with a little bit of that hybrid role for Teodo. I think he could be ready for the big leagues right now as a reliever, as more of a one-inning reliever. Is he ready to start right now at the big league level? Absolutely not. No. He's not there yet. I think he can get there. I think he can be a starter. But right now, which the Rangers are very concerned about right now, because the Rangers need a lot of innings and starts right now, he's not quite there yet But for Leiter, he keeps on struggling with staying in the strike zone, being a little bit more consistent. He went 4 innings, struck out 4, did walk 3, and gave up a couple of runs as well as a couple of hits. But he was really battling against that White Sox team. I know it's the White Sox, and they're not very good. But this was an interesting start from Jack, and I really loved the interview that he gave on Rangers Sports Network after his start, which was still during the game. And I don't usually love listening to big league players give interviews because honestly, a lot of times there's not anything very particularly interesting. Usually, they have all been very media coached up well to just say non-answers that don't really, give you much insight into what they're thinking, that, they're safe answers. I don't blame them. I'm not saying they're boring people. But it's just been ingrained in them. But with Jack, when he gives an interview, he really thinks about the question. He really tries to show his thought process. He really tries to, illustrate what's actually going through his mind and give an honest, thoughtful answer. And I really appreciate that about Jack. He is really such a smart guy, such a thoughtful and well-spoken guy. He wants to give that insight. He is a very heady pitcher, and him and Garrett Cole also kind of does this, quite a bit. They just give insights of like, okay, this is what I was actually working on. He was very honest about his changeup. He threw his changeup a bit too much. He said, I fell in love with it just a bit too much. I was just trying to work on it. And, in spring training, you try and ride that difference between, tinkering with stuff and actually getting results. And at this point, I don't think Jack Leiter has that much I don't think he can tinker as much anymore. I think it's just go time for Jack. He did throw over 80 pitches in this game 79 pitches. 48 of those were strikes. He was not in the zone as much as I would have liked him to be in that game, but he still had some moments that he looked really, really good. He looked like Jack Leiter. He looked like the Jack Leiter that we have been waiting to see. I know it's not the most economical use of his pitch count, but he was looking good. He was getting a lot of swings and misses on the slider, which he hasn't really done at this point in the spring. It's good to see that. He was trusting the sinker, which I wish he would tell his buddy Kumar, hey, trust your sinker. It's good. It also makes your four-seam fastball that much better. He was getting a lot of out-of-zone swing percentage. They were chasing out of the zone on the four-seam fastball quite a bit. That was good. He said early on in that game against the White Sox, the plan was to try and throw pitches more in the zone, and the White Sox hitters were aggressive in the zone. They were taking big swings and making hard contact early. So he said, okay, that's the cat and mouse games. You got to adjust. Once they start doing that, then you expand the zone a little bit. If they start being more patient, then you go back to the zone. It's kind of a figuring out process. And one of the things that he said that I thought was really insightful is about what he learned last year is, you feel like you're so far away from the big leagues, and when you don't have success at the big league level, you feel like, it's so overwhelming and that you're so far away. But he said, I've realized a lot that, the difference between good outings and bad outings for me, it's not all that far away. Like, I'm not really that far away from being where I want. He also talked about, learning what your good outings look like versus what your bad outings look like, and how to make the bad outings look a little bit better. I really like that. I think that is just such a smart way and such a very mature way to think about pitching. And that's why I'm a little bit more confident with Jack right now making this rotation and making an impact. I think he's ready to go. I think it's close, and I think there's going to be some growing pains. I think he is good enough to fill this role right now of stepping into this spot in the rotation. Is he going to stay there for the entire year? I don't know. With Rocker, I think he'll get there too. I think that the results were worse than what the quality of his pitching was on Friday night against the Padres. I really think that both of these guys can step into that role, but it's close. It's really close. But neither of them are that far away, and I think they know what they need to work on. And I think that the Rangers are not going to expect too much from them if they jump into this rotation early on. It's not going to be given to them. Chris Young has said that over and over again. It's like, yeah, these guys are talented. Yeah, these guys have a lot of prospect hype on them. Yeah, I think they're going to be really good pitchers someday. But we're not just going to hand them a spot in this rotation because two guys got hurt. That's not how this works. Not if you want to be a winning team. Not if you're a team that's trying to compete right now. You can't just hand guys spots because we think eventually you're going to be pretty good. You have to earn it. And so far, this spring, Rocker hasn't really earned it. he more earned it with what he did last year at the big league level and at the minor league level, forcing his hand. He might end up starting the year in AAA, even with these injuries. With Leiter, I don't think he's going to start the season in AAA. And if the Rangers do go with some external options, there's just not a whole lot there at this point. If the Rangers want an external option, I mean, you look at the free agent market, there's not much there. There's Lance Lynn, who's in his late 30s. There's Kyle Gibson, who's also in his late 30s. Lynn, you look at his baseball savant page, there is a whole lot of blue, and there is literally no red. I mean, he pitched 117 innings last year with a 3.84 ERA and 23 starts. It was fine. The Rangers would take fine right now. They would take fine for plugging into that fifth spot in the rotation. Or Kyle Gibson last year, he made 30 starts. He had a 4.2 ERA and 169 and 2/3 innings, and he struck out 150. It was fine. The off-speed stuff is still, pretty good. The changeup is still working pretty well. The fastball is not nearly as good as it once was. The breaking stuff is about league average at this point, but I think he would cost enough for the Rangers to go into the luxury tax. I don't imagine he'd cost that much more than the $5 million one-year deal that Andrew Heaney got with the Pirates. I really don't. I mean, he didn't have a better year than Heaney. He made the same number of starts. I don't think he's as effective. And that would probably push the Rangers just barely into the luxury tax. But at this point, if ownership isn't willing to just push a little bit into the luxury tax, then what are you doing? If the Rangers are going to push into that luxury tax, and take on a decent chunk of salary, there is an option in Jordan Montgomery. He's making $22.5 million this year, so it would be a hefty price to pay. The Rangers, just financially, I don't think the Rangers would give up any prospects, and I think the Diamondbacks would definitely have to eat a decent chunk of that contract, and it would push the Rangers well into that luxury tax threshold, which they are trying to reset for that third year in a row, so that next year, hopefully they will go into that luxury tax again, because they should, because they are a competitive team. They are a team not far removed from a World Series. They are a team in a top 5 media market that should be spending in the luxury tax and not whining and moaning and complaining about it. Because the thing that happens when you spend that money, the thing that it allows you to do is get depth. That's why the Dodgers are so set up for any kind of depth, for weathering any kind of injury storm, barring a literal plague. I mean, they're spending $1 bazillion because they've got 8, 9, 10 starting pitchers deep in their rotation. With guys you include guys that are on the injured list or are going to start the season on the injured list. That's what the money allows you to do. And if you don't spend that money, if you're not able to spend that money, you have to build that depth in other ways. And as so far, you look at the guys on the minor league side, I mean, Teodo is not going to be quite ready. Winston Santos had a great spring breakout game, 3 perfect innings with, I want to say 9 strikeouts. Maybe it was 8 strikeouts. It was a lot of strikeouts in 3 perfect innings of work for Winston Santos. He's still quite a ways away, and there's still questions about whether he's going to start or not. If the Rangers wanted to make a big splash and trade for a Jordan Montgomery and take on that money, it's me spending someone else's money. But if it were me, that would be what I would do. He is not going to make the Diamondbacks opening day rotation. I think he's going to be infinitely better than he was last year, having a normal offseason, having a normal spring training, getting back to more of that pitcher like he was down the stretch and through the World Series with the Rangers in 2023. But I don't think the Rangers are going to do that as much as I would like them to. And if the Rangers have to roll with Rocker and Leiter, and if there are some growing pains, is there a way that the Rangers could still keep winning games throughout this? I think yes. I'm going to tell you how right after this.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Shout out to the Airders making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Wednesday, shall we be back and talking about what the Rangers need from Tyler Mahle with these two big injuries in the rotation. Now, the Rangers are going to have to win games early. They're going to have to win games in the middle of the season. They're going to have to win games in late in the season. And if the Rangers don't have Jon Gray, which, you know, I had some concerns about Jon Gray and his effectiveness this season. I mean, he talked about wanting to hit 200 innings and 200 strikeouts for the first time in his career, and well, that's definitely not happening. Well, the 200 innings are not happening, and the 200 strikeouts are not happening unless he comes back and literally looks like, I don't know, Nolan Ryan and pitches every third game or so for the Rangers, or just throws a whole bunch of complete games with, 18, 19 strikeouts per game. But that's probably not happening for Jon Gray. And with Leiter and with Rocker, I think it'll be helpful for them if they are starting at the big league level and, going through a little bit of those learning curves at the big league level. But there's only so much learning you can do on a team that's competing. And if you're trying to compete, you need to win. You need to have those guys be actually ready for a spot in the rotation. But it's a little bit of a catch-22 situation. These guys need to learn how to start at the big league level, but you can't do that really without starting at the big league level. I mean, Jack Leiter last year was the PCL Pitcher of the Year in AAA, and that's the highest level before you get to the big leagues. Now, maybe they learn a little bit of that, of how to start against big leaguers, how to go against big leaguers by going some of these split start kind of games, piggyback games of going through the order 2 times as opposed to 3 or 4 times like you would as a starter. Maybe that's how the Rangers kind of introduce them to starting and also fill a spot in the rotation. Maybe the Rangers also reach out to a guy who is on the Mets, who was on the Rangers last year in Jose Urena. He signed a minor league deal with the Mets this spring training. I don't know if he has an opt-out. Usually guys will have an opt-out clause in those minor league contracts where if I'm not going to make the big league roster with the team that I signed with, they will have out days. And I don't know if Urena has one of those out clauses in his contract. I'm assuming that he does. I'm very surprised that someone didn't just give him a big league deal with how darn good Jose Urena was last year. I mean, he was really important for this Rangers squad. I think the Rangers should at the very least kick the tires on bringing him back. But even if they don't, even if the Rangers just do go with Rocker and Leiter and they have some struggles and it is a little bit difficult, there's also the ramifications for, if those guys do struggle and if the Rangers are having, 3 or heck, even maybe 4 guys in the rotation that are not able to go more than 5 innings or so, it's going to put a lot of weight on this bullpen that you don't want to tax out too much. Thankfully, the Rangers have a lot of off days early on in the season. They have 4 off days in April. That's going to be very necessary. I mean, it is going to be essential. And then you look at May, they still have a decent number of off days, 3, not as many off days in May. May's where it's going to get tough on the Rangers. So the Rangers, I know they are hoping, I mean, you really hope Bradford is back as soon as possible, but coming back to that pen in early May, that should help. Gray is not going to be back until the late end of May at the very earliest. I mean, 10 weeks puts him back around the 26th of May, which the Rangers could really, really use some help at that point. Maybe Rocker or Leiter go down and work on some things at that point. But if the Rangers don't do that, if they do have to kind of, struggle through and win these games, there is another way to win games besides having good pitching. It's by having a good offense. It's outslugging your way to wins, which the Rangers might just have to do for decent chunks of the season, especially early on. And right now, they've got the offense to do that. I mean, they have got an incredibly deep and incredibly talented offense that I've honestly barely talked about this spring training because I've been so concerned about the starting pitching, about what Jack Leiter's doing, about what Kumar Rocker's doing, about how healthy is DeGrom, when is DeGrom throwing. Can I please see him in a game that matters where my eyeballs can be on him, as opposed to seeing what his pitches do by beat writers writing down pitch by pitch, which I do appreciate. Shout out the beats for being able to see those games and bringing us very detailed information from Kennedy Landry, from Evan Grant, from everybody at DLS as well, just giving us those deets as we need it. But I haven't talked about the offense basically at all. And it's been awesome. And it's going to be awesome. And the Rangers are going to need it to be awesome. I mean, when your 8th and 9th hitters are probably going to be guys who are fringe all-stars, if not all-stars. I mean, Jonah Heim is probably going to be hitting 9th quite a bit. And he was an all-star 2 years ago. It was not that long ago. And now he's hitting 9th in this lineup. And he's hitting 9th because he's probably the 9th best hitter in this lineup, which means that there are 8 hitters that are better than an all-star. That's how good this lineup has been. Jock Peterson has looked incredible. Jake Berger has looked incredible. Wyatt Langford, incredible. After a little bit of a rocky start, Adolis Garcia back to looking like the best version of Adolis Garcia. Heck, even Leody Taveras has been having a really good spring, looking much, much better again in plate appearance against left-handed pitching. And also Kevin Pillar, who's a non-roster invitee, has looked very, very good as well. He's been playing quite a few games. I think he might end up making this opening day roster over Ezekiel Duran. That's really the only way that I could see him making it over him. While Evan Carter hasn't had the best spring training, we've all seen what he can do. Josh Young, very good player. Marcus Semien, also very good player. And don't forget about Corey freaking Seager. I mean, this lineup is so incredibly deep and so incredibly talented that it honestly might just be good enough to hit their way out of any problems they have. It's just that good. And I don't even want to say what I'm thinking about. Thank God there haven't been many injuries on the hitting side. I mean, just knocking on all the wood that exists. I will go and knock on every tree that I go and find the rest of this afternoon to make sure that there are hopefully no more injuries on the hitting side. And if the Rangers don't have those injuries on the hitting side, then they can hit their way out of some problems. Heck, even if they do have some. We saw what the depth of this lineup is with guys like Josh Smith stepping up and having a big year last year, with guys like Zeke Duran, with hopefully Leody Taveras. I think he'll get a pretty decent chunk of playing time this year. I know last year was really, really rough for him, and he had a really, really rough post-All-Star break in 2023. But I still do think there's a very good player in there. Even if Evan Carter has a bit of a down season, even if Evan Carter can't hit lefties, I mean, all of these guys in this lineup are at least all-star caliber. I think everybody who's going to start for the Rangers on opening day, well, maybe not opening day because the Rangers are going to be facing a lefty, but everybody who starts most of these games against right-handed starting pitching is, fringe all-star at worst. And when you got a lineup that's legitimately 9 deep, even if you're having some issues with the rotation, even if you're having some issues with their bullpen, which the Rangers haven't had so far, thankfully the bullpen looks pretty solid. I mean, I'm really excited to see what this pen can do once we get to the regular season. I'm hoping that they won't be too overtaxed by the time we get to mid-season. But by then, maybe the Rangers are having some internal candidates step up, guys who are almost ready, but not quite ready to make this big league pen right now. But this is a rough place to be, for sure, with the Jon Gray and Cody Bradford injury. But there's one last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here today. Former Ranger great, personal favorite, Joey Gallo, is no longer hitting. He was cut by the White Sox, granted his unconditional release, and he released a promo video that implied that he would be pitching. He said, "Outfield, it's been fun for now," and then gave a peace out symbol, and it showed him pitching in high school. And everyone thought, okay, what is this, Joey? Are you pitching now? And then he followed it up by saying, yeah, in case you were curious, that this means that I'm pitching now. And I think that's definitely a guy who the Rangers should call up immediately to get him on this team. This is a guy who has an absolute bazooka cannon for an arm. He touched 100 on the mound multiple times. He sat in the upper 90s. He has got an incredibly talented arm. And when he was coming out of high school, when he was going to the draft, one of my favorite stories to tell about Joey Gallo is that he would not tell scouts when he was pitching. He didn't want them to know because he said, hey, I'm a hitter. Well, no longer is that the case. Is Joey Gallo going to be the next Shohei Ohtani and be a two-way player? Well, me personally, my own biases, I think maybe. But signing Joey Gallo to a minor league deal to help work on his pitching ability, the Rangers have shown an ability to teach pitchers sliders at the minor league level. And if he comes out there, if he's probably just going to be a reliever, if he comes out there and is sitting in the upper 90s and the Rangers teach him how to throw a half-decent slider, you pick that guy up, that could be a guy who is a part of the next great Rangers team. Maybe Joey Gallo gets his ring with the Rangers in 2027 as a part of the Rangers bullpen. What a turnaround that would be. What a fun storyline that would be. But just something to keep an eye on. And it wouldn't be my podcast if I didn't mention some big news with Joey Gallo on it. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.